We looked at the life cycle of a project. This is something very important for us to realize. We don't do everything all at once. We have certain stages. And one way to remember this is C, D, E, F. C is conceptualizing. D is basically detail the planning, execute, and then finalize the project. That's like the 4 stages through which we go through. And as we discussed, there are steps involved in each of those, and they better be complete right there. Something that is very important for us to realize is before you move on to the next stage, a gate has to be crossed. This gate is basically the quality control gate. For example, as you move from defining to planning, the scope should be very clear. Without that, your planning will be all lopsided. Before you leave planning and go into execution, all the details must be laid out. Your CPM must be complete, critical path method and so on and forth. You identified all the tasks, defined them. You define the work packages. Only after that you can assign the contract. You can go ahead and award the subcontracts and so on. That has got to be done right there. Before you deliver, obviously, when your execution is complete, you have to make sure that the project is actually certified. The product is certified or the service is certified to be okay by the site inspector. And of course, handing over is when you shake hands with the customer, you collect your check and you make sure that everything is in order the way it was supposed to be. The product life cycle begins after this. So when the project life cycle ends, that's when product life cycle begins. Product or service life cycle. That's when you start getting your ROI. That's when you start getting your benefits from the project. So this is something we got to remember very clearly. That there's no talk about the product when I'm doing the project. It only comes out at the end when I've completed the project, I'm handing over the results. That's when you got the finished product, or the molecule, or the ship has been built, or the airplane has been built, or something like that, and you've completed the project. The people, there are obviously a lot of tasks involved with this. The people who are practitioners, and they are the people who, for example, have this. They wrote this PMBOK guide. They have looked at all the different tasks, and what they have found is there are certain activities that can be grouped together. For example, they say that there is the initiation phase. Certain things you do before you launch the project. These are the initiating stages. From that you move on and you cross one quality check, you move on to the planning phase. That's like a distinct phase consisting of certain activities which you do right under planning. You're not doing anything that is going to be beyond this. You're not doing anything that has come before this. And this planning, therefore, would consist of those activities that are required to have the planning part completed. I'll give you some details there. Then obviously, once planning is complete, you move into execution. And then you move toward closing the project, which is like finalizing the project. So these are groups of activities that have been clarified by people who are the practitioners. The theory won't tell you much about this. But practitioners tell you if you have this clarity, your project is going to run very well. And of course, while all this is going on, you are having many different quality checks. For that, I need these controlling processes. The controlling processes look at what was expected and what was completed, what was delivered. And those checks have to be done right at the planning stage. So can someone tell me, in order for the planning stage to be thought to be complete, what all things must be clear? What all things must be clear before I begin to execute the project? What all things must be clear? Milestones, yes. Deliverables, good. Yes, yes. Schedule also. He mentioned schedule also. The sequence, yes. Exactly. What would these individuals be doing? The different domain experts, what specific things would they be doing? Tell me something between the initiation of the project and the planning. What is there in between these two groups? That is the first part. What is the first part? I've got the charter there and the scope there.
So the site deliberation and the procurement.
That will come in planning. That will come in planning. But initiation is basically clarifying the scope and also working out the work breakdown structure. Those things have to be done before you actually begin your planning. That is required as planning. What about between execution and closing? What is that? What is that step?
Snack.
It yes, 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 exactly, exactly. So you can see the transition is controlled by my quality checks. I'm calling it in a very generic way. I'm doing this. Now, what are the things I'll be controlling if I'm trying to control a project? What all things I should be concerned about when I'm talking about controlling a project? Cost, yes. Schedule, time, quality. Quality has to go with the requirement. These are some of the crucial things that I must really keep in mind when I'm assigned the task of controlling the process. So this person, he must be well versed in evaluating quality. You may have more than one person doing this, and therefore it's got to be made sure that in order for the user to be happy, in fact this control may also involve the user. Many times, for example, in software development, now you've got development where you've got intense involvement of the customer, of the client. That way you make sure that he owns also part of the project. He gives you the requirement and he passes certain things. Those things have to be done as you're doing your controls.
Sir, in the controlling button, I would like to add one thing. Sir.
Please, yes.
Since the design changes,
Yes.
and that position, and at that condition also you need to change. Like the clients might have different options.
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
need to change that. You need to fix that. This change will cost you this much. So don't do this, or you can give some solution also.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Give me your name.
Robin, sir.
What Robin is saying, this actually comes under what we call change management. You cannot have a project going and arbitrarily make changes in it. You just cannot do that. This is like, I remember when I was a plant production planner, for example, production scheduler. Many times the salespeople, they used to call the filler, the machine shop directly. And they would say, where is my job? Tell me exactly when my job is going to be done. And they'll be talking to the machinist directly. And this would be such a big disruption because management would not be aware of it. And there are changes being made right on the shop floor without any kind of change control put in place. So what Robin is saying, this is very, very critical. The crucial thing is, yes, obviously we want the customer to be happy. And if he's thought through his needs and if he's got those things changed, let him come through the formal channel. Because it might change the activities, it may end up costing more time, it may end up costing more money. Those things have to be approved again by the sponsor or someone that he authorizes. So this is something we also have to keep in mind. Change control is, yeah.
Most of the time when you look at the planning stage, that's when you focus about the trade-offs between cost, time, and quality.
Yes, yes.
Most of the time the trade-off at this stage is a linear function.
Absolutely.
But after planning, you go down to the
Very good point.
and
Very good point.
Your suppliers might offer you a discount.
Very good point. Very good point.
So you go back to your planning stage again, or you bring in the change management here.
What you do is you, just off the bat, when you're starting the project, you set up these protocols. You see, if there's going to be changes made because of the external environment, for example, you already have a risk management plan in place. And that spells out what all actions to be done in case plan A does not work or something does not work. You'll have it all spelled out there. But if you reach a stage when there's like a large change to be made, they got to bring in a new crane or something, or you need a different platform and a new software or something, or you need people with different kind of skills, there'll be an impact of that. Get it okayed by the sponsor. Do not take the decision unless it's something for which you've been empowered. Always get back to the sponsor, tell him this is the impact, and give him a complete picture. Make sure he understands what he's going to get because of the change, what he's going to get, how the deliverables are going to change, and what will be the impact on schedule, what will be the impact on cost. Those things have to be very clear. Then they can decide. In fact, believe me, the analytical skills are going to be paramount. So someone in the planning group should have very good analytical skills. He should understand costing, he should understand time measurement, he should understand estimation, quantity measurement, all those things he should know. So if you can't do it yourself, just again hire an expert for it. Subcontract that part of it. There are people who specialize just doing project planning. There are people who specialize only in execution. There are people who write documents and stuff like that. So you engage those people. And these are the kind of things that we should keep track of when we do the closing of the project. These are lessons for us. This is how I build my database. Now, all these activities that are going on, I've got the scope, I've got time, cost, quality, all these things. Someone has to have an overview of all this. And that is called integration management. How do I bring all these issues together? And when something may impact something else, how do I work out the compromise, work out the trade-offs and so on? This integration also is a very, very big issue. Many times This is sort of done, this is lost from the scene. The reason is this: people are specialized in silos. Unless someone is kind of, he is able to take a big picture view of things, people get sucked into these things and they stay focused on silo alone, and then there is a lot of difficulty in integrating various things. This is something we got to keep in mind. So alongside the different knowledge areas where you require different types of skills, the PMBOK system also emphasizes the integration management. They say you please make sure integration is also something that you keep in mind. Don't just worry about the silos, the specialized areas. Also make sure you do these things. Now just to go through the list, scope, you understand what it means. Scope means what things I'll be doing, what things I'll not be doing. Time, of course, the time at which I can commit to do the thing. Cost will lead to my budget. Quality is requirements. Human resource, the different types of skills I require and when I require them, that plan has to be there. Communication, all the reporting things and everything else, all the little meetings you'll be holding, those things will be there. Risk, I just can't tell you how important this risk business is, because there is almost no project that goes along just exactly the way you plan. There are things that fall up here and there. And procurement, what things you'll make in-house and what things you'll be basically buying from outside. That is something, these decisions, they have to be made. These are in the PMBOK guideline, the practitioner's guideline, they call this 9 project areas, 9 project knowledge areas. Execution, of course, is, you've seen SDLC. I'm just going to give you a little glimpse of that, the software development life cycle. It also follows pretty well this thing. But of course, this is also in a state of flux. It's not that everyone is doing SDLC. Many people are doing XP, many people are doing something else. So therefore, this is not something, as the needs come up, as we run into snags and problems, people are evolving these processes also. So therefore, if you look up a project management book on IT project management, for example, which is not like the PMBOK, but a similar book, it will have a state of flux. It will actually show you these are the possibilities. You please figure out what is best for you. These are the benefits, these are the advantages of doing it this way, and these are the other things that actually go that way also. That is there. It requires different amount of engagement of the user, and sometimes the testing is done right on the spot. For example, if it is XP style programming, then you got the coder and the tester sitting next to each other, and they are basically doing this development alone. Otherwise, the coder does his building, then the unit testing guy, he does his testing. And sometimes, of course, the whole module is built, someone then tries to debug the thing. And people have learned lessons from this. There are certain things which are good, certain things are not so good. So it's in a state of flux, but again, the effort is to try to make sure if I can systemize these procedures, then of course life is going to be much easier. The PMI people, they actually say, Project Management Institute people, this is based in Connecticut. What they say is, these are some of the things that are followed in IT project management, and they are a lot like the old CDEF, the life cycle that you saw. Notice here, again, they talk about scope, they talk about time, they talk about cost, they talk about resources, communication contact, exactly the same thing. If any of these bricks are pulled out, the wall is going to collapse, or the wall is going to be crooked. I'm trying to build a wall with some components. These are the components. I got to have them together. And can you tell me, if I have all these things, what else I need beyond this? Integration. I need to have integration also. Someone who is able to see that big picture view, and he asks for certain types of reports and so on. And he's generally a man who walks around. He does by walking around. He does the management by walking around. Now, if you look at the PMBOK, it's a guidebook that is for practitioners. They have a certain way of presenting information to you. This is like one picture that you'll see many times when you go through the project management, this PMBOK book. You'll see a lot of stuff is put like this. This framework is for a particular task. The task here is going to be project plan development. And the way they've done it is they identify the inputs, they identify the outputs, and they identify the process, and they identify the tools and techniques required to take care of this task. For every major task, they've got a framework like this. And from that, of course, you get details. For example, inputs would be other planning inputs, other planning outputs. Other projects may have run, and there may be outputs from there that are required in order for me to develop the plan. Historical information, very important. Organizational policies, certain policies may be there. Maybe people can't work overtime. Some policies may be there. That's going to have an impact there. So you better know that before you start your planning process. Constraints, unions may put certain requirements, certain trades may be there, and so on and so forth. That also would be there. And then you'll have your own assumptions, things that you can't really get an answer to from outside. You list those, this thing. The output is obviously going to be the project plan, and there will be certain tools used, project planning methodology, which will come from your theory, and stakeholder skills and so on and so forth. That would be there. Project management and information systems, those are also tools, because that's where our historical data has been kept. And then I've got something called EVM, earned value management. I'll cover that separately in a lecture. That is also going to be there. The process is taking it all, taking the input and crunching it to produce the output using these tools. That's going to be the procedure for plan development. Similarly, to define the scope. Now, please remind me again, I keep forgetting things. What is the scope of a project? What do I mean?
What is under my consideration? What I'll be doing, what I'll not be doing.
Yes, yes. You very clearly you lay out, because your estimates, your costs and everything, they are contingent on what you agree to buy, agree to build. You know, this is something that you commit to. Therefore, it's very important for us to understand these things would be included and these things would not be included. So that defines the scope for me. To do that, I need the WBS. W is your work breakdown structure. We'll see that in a few minutes. Scope statement, a very clear statement of the scope. This you've clarified with the sponsor and the user groups that will be interacting with you, historical information, constraints and so on, and of course expert judgment. There are people who are seasoned in that kind of project. So someone who's worked on 5-6 projects overseas, he's got a pretty decent idea what things fly, what things don't fly. You don't need like 8 wheels for an airplane to land. You know, you need like 2 wheels maybe, or 2 or 3 wheels. That's about it. So those are things that are known to people who have already gone through the process. And the technique for defining the scope is you look at the charter and you sort of ask the same question. What things will be included, what things will not be included. And that would be there from this point on. The output is going to be, from the scope, you'll come up with activity list. How am I going to be delivering the different tasks, the objects, the different results that will be coming out, that will be there. Supporting details would be there. Work breakdown structure would be there. These are like updates, details, more details of the thing. Similarly, you've got activity sequencing. Not all things would be started all at once. Certain things would be done first, certain things would be done later. And I've got to make sure I've got this sequence right. And that's determined pretty well by technology, the technology for building the process. This is something there all the time. Then got this huge issue of risk. Risk caused delays. Risk raised the cost of things. Risk may actually hold you back from meeting specs. That is something there. And risk may even defunct the project. It's very possible because of high risk or something, or a risky event took place, and therefore the project is terminated. These happen. Once in a while, these happen. Many projects actually run into this sort of snag. And it does not mean I just lay back and I watch the rains, watch the clouds. It does not mean that. You got to plan ahead. And this is where experience comes in, this is where history comes in, this is where, you know, people who are experienced in that area, they come in, you bring in the domain experts and so on. You say, please identify some of the things that could go wrong here. I use a diagram. I've worked maybe between 20 and 30 projects. From technology transfer to project development to software work to hardware design to a lot of R&D projects to some places where we had to train people, massive amounts of number of training had to be done and so on and so forth, and some real plant erection type of projects that also I've worked on. So I've got a pretty decent idea. Many times we don't spend much time in doing our risk analysis and we run into snags. This is really bad news. If you have to stall something because something happened and somebody got hurt, a key person got hurt, and he's staying at home, and because of the project is stalled, and we didn't plan for it. We didn't plan for this sort of thing. So that is something we got to keep in mind. We can't really do this. How do we manage risk? Very quickly, this is like we'll be detailing this later on. You identify potential risks. And one great way to do this is you involve people who are in that area, who are in that domain. And you construct what we call a cause and effect diagram. Are you aware of the fishbone diagram? This is something you'll be using. So you'll put the risky event at the end. You see, in what different ways could this happen? Just do a plain dumping of your thoughts and do brainstorming and try to capture as many of those snags as possible. These are the potential causes. They may or may not go wrong, but at least you've identified them all, and then you've got the effect there. The effect is going to be some problem in the end that you don't want to have. Once you've done this, then you move on to analyzing those risks. And there are two dimensions in which you analyze every risk. A risk is an event that is undesirable. One is the impact dimension. how severe is going to be the impact? If something goes wrong, what will be the impact? The other dimension is probability. Impact and probability. If it's a high probability event with high impact, it's a highly risky situation. That's something I cannot really sort of live with. For example, let's say you plan to spend your winter break in Sundarban. You must have a guide, you must have a map, you must know people who are familiar with that area. If you don't do that, and you think you are kind of having a canoe ride in Kerala, and you take your canoe and you go out, and my God, there's a tiger alongside, and the tiger is tracking you. The tiger is watching, can he jump in the water and grab you? Are you close enough for him to do that? These things happen. So for that, what we got to do is, we got to make sure we understand the risk, and we look at its impact and look at its probability. Then we take action. I'm going to be giving you some exercises when we do this. And there's going to be one team that will be looking into that. I'm hoping very much that you'll be able to identify the risks involved in your particular project. So in your group, there may be someone who's got some experience in working on a specific project. Take that one and try to identify the risks, try to do this cause and effect diagram, and then I'll show you how to exactly work out. And you can always come and see me. If there's any difficulty with any concept, before you make the presentation, I'll make sure I'm happy with it. Then you try to work to minimize the occurrence of the risk. Occurrence actually is the probability side. Then you got contingency plans. Contingency plans are like your plan B. If something does foul up, what do I do? These things have to be done ahead of time. And many times, of course, you find some contingency actions are not required. Like in a car, in a vehicle, I carry a spare tire, a spare wheel, and I check the pressure of it also. Not just my 4 tires, but also I make sure there's enough air in that thing. Because that thing may have no air, because I've not used it for 1 or 2 years. So there may be maybe no air in my car. That's something I've got to worry about, especially if I'm going to Calcutta, if I'm driving along. But you guys, when you came from the hostel, were you carrying a spare tube and a spare tire on your bicycle? You're not doing that. You've done that already. So you're already an expert risk manager. It's just that you've probably not thought through, you've probably not articulated these things, but you already are a top-notch project manager. You've got your mission clear, you've got your scope clear and everything else. Maybe for small things you don't bother doing the estimation and so on, but for times you've got pretty decent estimates, as we'll run into in a few minutes. We'll just see that. There are projects, and then there are certain things called programs. When you've got similar projects in a portfolio, it becomes a program. Like the Tata Motors, for example, they have a vehicles program. The Telcon people, they're in the heavy earth-moving equipment type of thing. They are the guys who are preparing various types of earth movers, small ones, big ones, and hand-holding ones, and so on and so forth. So they've got all kinds of equipment that belong to a particular class. So their program would have probably 3 or 4 different development ideas chugging along. But they're not like cars. The guys who are doing this earth equipment, they're really not worried about passenger cars. And the passenger cars people, they don't worry about trucks. So you've got programs. Within programs, you'll have several projects. That's like the distinction between a project and a program. The program is usually a mix of projects. Some will be high return, some may be a little risky, and so on and so forth. Just like you select, stocks for a portfolio, same sort of thing is done by companies. If we did all the time, only those things that were safe would never be rich. So once in a while, we got to take that risk and do it. And then make sure you think positive. Here's your some sort of guideline as to how you prioritize different projects. There are many projects you could do, right? It's like many different things you could do. Many different criteria are there. When you're looking at a product, for example, you're looking at many different criteria by which you judge this. Now, let me clarify this for you. There are certain requirements in every product that are critical requirements. A critical requirement, what is the critical requirement for a pen? Now, let me first tell you this. A critical requirement is something, if a critical fault is there, it will do damage to life or damage to property. That is the determination. It will either do some damage to property or damage to life. What could be a critical defect in a pen? Leakage. And I hold it. We had a guest. We had a Nobel laureate in IIT Kanpur, and he was kind enough to give us some time. And the students arranged this completely. And poor kids, they didn't realize that the pen there, whatever pen The profs never used it because it leaked. This gentleman, he picked up that pen and started writing with it, and lo and behold, his 2 fingers, they were all blue. And we were very embarrassed. We were obviously red in our face. Now, that's a critical defect. Then there is something called a major functional requirement for a product. What is the major functional requirement for a pen? Why do I buy the pen? To write clearly and so on and so forth. What would be a minor functional requirement for a pen? Should be easy to, excellent, yeah, yeah. And then what are the cosmetic requirements for a pen? Maybe the match between colors and so on, the shape and those things. Those are like, this may be a little more attractive than this one, as an example. So projects also are that way. Certain projects are critical projects. These are absolute must. You cannot escape those. Safety projects, health-related projects. These are projects, they are like absolute essential. You can't really skip them. You can't really, legal projects, legal obligations and so on, security, regulatory things. These projects must be done. There's no escape from it. So they require priority 1. So our director also has certain priorities. These things are absolute must. I mean, there will be no compromise, we'll be doing that. Then you've got the highly desirable or the major functional requirements, those types of projects. These lead to profits. These lead to the major reason why a company exists. These are the ones that bring money to the company. These are the reasons how share prices go up, share values go up. And beyond that, you've got these others, which are like minor functional. These are like cosmetics, low risk projects, and they give you some money. They generate some money for you. So those are there. You'll probably have some of them. And notice here, we are talking about ROI. My major ROI is going to be from my highly desirable projects. Then there will be minor ROI, my feeders. Those are going to be my less desirable projects, but they are also there. And then I've got something like nice to have. What sort of nice to have projects do you think we have in IIT? As you walked into this building, what did you notice? Exactly, my God. It's as if like we had a chat before we came to the class. The ambience it creates, it's like nice to have. They have no impact on the classroom, this thing, but probably we'll all be a little more present, a little more attentive and so on, and it gives a general good feeling sort of. So those are the kind of things, this is how you prioritize different projects. If you look at projects, they got to be prioritized this way, just like critical requirement, major functional requirement, minor functional requirement, and then cosmetic requirements. Sometimes, of course, the cosmetic requirement itself may be the critical one. Give me an example. When the cosmetic requirement itself is the critical one. Perfume, style, fashion. That's really the function, no other function. Yeah, beauty products and these things. That's it. By chance, they're called cosmetics, but they're critical. To initiate a project, that is like to start a project, I've got to have my charter. The charter spells out the mission of the project. From that, I work out the statement of the project, and then I do my feasibility analysis. Someone was pointing at feasibility. I've got economic feasibility. Is the ROI going to be there? Is it going to be for a good life of the project, or is it going to be just for 2 years? Operational aspects. Is it something that will be easy for me to adapt to? Technical aspects. Is it technically feasible? These things are looked at when people are doing major initiatives. They've got to look at these things. Sometimes, of course, the benefits are not economic. You've got social impact, and those things have to be clarified very well. There was a project that was launched north of Bombay, and this was to launch microfinancing projects, small projects, microfinancing initiatives in the villages. See, I should tell you this little story. Most of the people who live on the coastline north of Bombay, in fact all around India, they are either they fish themselves, they go out on their trawlers, they bring some fish, or there are people who help these people harvest that fish. So they may go out on the boat with you, or they are waiting right at the shore. When the boat comes, they unload the thing, they take the fish out, then they sort them between good and bad and so on. But that's what their job is. This tribe is called Kolis. Anyone from Maharashtra here? Okay, so you probably know these Koli people. Their employment is highly seasonal, and for a good period of the day they are idling. And what do men do these days? When they are idling, what do they do? So because of this, they are really not earning anything. and they're dependent on that 20 rupees, 30 rupees, 40 rupees they got when the boat was unloaded. That was it. After that, they're again idling. Unfortunately, when I've got cash in my pocket, and I know this is like something I got to have before I go to bed, I spend 10 rupees on that or 15 rupees on that. Not really mindful of what I'm doing. As a result, ladies back home have no money. They get 5, 10, 20 rupees at the end of the day, and it's not enough for them to bring food for the family for the next day. This is something that's like a real problem. So some people thought about it, and some NGOs, they got together, and I was actually helping them with project management. I said, my God, there is a way you could spell out the charter, you could do some planning and all, and you probably could do some project management here. I could teach some of these ladies how to do this. Of course, I don't speak Marathi. That's like one of my handicaps, major handicaps. But there was a lady there. This organization was very well organized. They had a lady there, and she was also from the same village, but she had gone up to grade 12. So she spoke very good Hindi, and she also spoke some English. And she obviously spoke Marathi. She said, I'm going to be your Sevika. Sevika means I'll help you. And I'll be interfacing between you and the ladies there. And sir, what is it that you'd like to do? We showed them, and I got this material from a few places, banks and so on and so forth, that loans are available. Loans are available as long as there is a collateral possible. Somebody guarantees that loan. Loans are available from SBI, from other banks also. Loans are possible to get. And then there's got to be a plan of action, which is like identify a service or a product that these ladies, 3, 4, 5 of them together, they could develop, and then they would go into a little business, small little business. So they started with a small loan of as low as 5,000 rupees and as high as 1 lakh rupees. What we then did was, I also belong to the Rotary. So we talked to our friends in the Rotary Club. We said, you don't have to give money. We know Rotary people generally, they will give you money, just like that. If you ask them, somebody needs some money, they'll give you 5,000, 10,000 rupees without any trouble at all. They'll do that. But we said, I told them, we don't need money, but just guarantee the loan. Just guarantee the loan. In case the business goes defunct, you'll probably end up paying 3,000, 4,000 rupees to the bank, 5,000 rupees to the bank. So this is something you'll have to do. That's all we require from you. So they became the guarantor. These loans were made to the ladies. In 1 year, they had found crazy things to do business with. For example, many of them, they bought chatais, and they started getting water bottles, and they got some other convenience and so on. And some of them even brought other things that people would like to see available at the beach. Like some people even started something as simple as coconuts and so on. These were not available to a typical person who came to the beach and he just wanted to walk around for a couple of hours. They started providing these services. And one lady, she even opened a shop, and she started getting other stuff and so on. And she employed her husband in that shop. So the husband, instead of sorting out fish, he was actually doing this. And he said, my God, you people are gods. We never saw light, but now you've shown us a way. And I'm also going to be helping this, and I've thrown away the bottle and all. I'm going to be doing this. Now, this is something that was also conceived as a project. Initially, the benefits turned out to be only basically social benefits, but they turn out to be economic benefits also. So it's something that you got to think through a little bit. You have to become involved. And very fortunately, I saw a lot of passion there that also attracts you to get into it. So you've got to have that passion. Once you have it, it's going to be no real issues at all. A lot of decisions to be made. You can read through these things. We've got to decide about which project to implement, selecting the project manager, selecting your team members. There's something to be done. Then obviously you require decisions at the planning stage and designing the project itself, controlling what all things you'll be controlling, EVM and so on and so forth, and deciding when the project is going to be declared to be complete. That's something that you'll be doing. Rank the alternatives, and this is where your ROI comes in, your discounted cash flow and so on, and this standard procedure would apply here. And again, we'll take a look at some of the exercises. And there are some in the books also that talk about how to actually do this. Notice here I've got ranking of alternatives, and I've got something here called sensitivity analysis. Now, you people are management people. Tell me, why is this important?
If any of my parameters,
very good.
Critical parameter changes,
very good. Very good. And critical parameters are coming from? They are coming from assumptions, or they are coming from history, or they are coming from the client. The cost at which I'll be selling this pen. I want to go into this business, but I have no idea of the market, and I assumed it to be sellable in 5 rupees. And suppose there is another pen available at 3 rupees, people won't buy this. Will I be able to survive, or should I go on to something else? Maybe I'll change my design to this. Those are the kind of issues I have to identify when I'm doing my sensitivity analysis. This is where analytical skills are required. This is where MBAs are required. Many times MBAs would be doing this. When I was working as a corporate planner, I was doing this sort of work. And many times I identified something that is called PERT CPM, and with that I was able to identify the factor that was most critical, in terms of doing the project. Initiate the project, and the initiation obviously can be done by the project manager. Once he gets the green light from the sponsor, he gets the money in the bank, he'll be doing this. The project manager is the key person. I just can't tell you, I'm pretty sure the project managers that you've encountered, some of them you'd give your right arm for. Some of them you'd like to stay away from. Obviously, there are certain technical things. Initiating, planning, blah, blah, these things have to be done. But by far the quality that is most critical is the human. It's the human part. If I've worked for probably 10 managers in my career of 20 odd years in industry. And after that, I've got 20 years in academics. But the 20 years in industry, there were about 3-4 people I could stay up all night if they wanted me to. That sort of person they were. The others, love it or leave it type of people. So it's something that's very critical. If you want people to follow you, it's not very difficult. It can be done, but it requires literally, there are many techniques, probably our OB people cover this. There are many methods that you can apply, and this is not something that you have to be born with. You can, if you have that high sensitivity, if you have a good enough sensitivity, you should be able to do it. And that's actually listed out also. Fortunately, books have studied, people have studied these things, and they sort of say, these are the kind of things that I'll be looking at. And I'm pretty sure the reason you guys have chosen to be MBAs is you have some of these qualities. Sharpen up on your people skills, and believe me, you'll be a winner. That I can write down today, you can fold it up and look it up after 5 years or 10 years. What skills you're using the most? It will be not really your technical skills, it will be really human skills. It will be how you're dealing with people. Yes, last night, I had to arrange a speaker for a couple of weeks from now. I had to arrange a speaker. And I approached person X, and he started giving me all kinds of reasons why he should not be the speaker. And in the end, he was ready to throw me out because I was very persistent. I said, nahi, nahi, aapko to bolna hi hai, aapko to bolna hai. And he was very sort of, in the end, he got so frustrated. He wanted to, I said, look, what you offered, nobody can. That way, you are my most valuable resource, and people love you. You don't know that. Is that right? I said, this is true, sir. The expertise that you have, nobody has this, and people love you for this, and people want to hear it from you, not somebody else. So you got to have these people skills there. He was, by the way, very weak on people skills. This is like something I just noticed. So this is something you got to figure out. Listening, persuading. I'm pretty sure you run into examples like this all the time. So kindly make sure that these are there. These are non-technical skills, and you got to have them in order for you to kind of move forward. The sponsor and the champion. There are two people. Sponsor is the money man, of course, who makes a business case for it. Then there's this guy who is the champion. The champion actually is a business manager, and he says, "Isko karna hai." Like we had a champion to set up this sort of system. Most of the faculty, they did their teaching, like me, talk and chalk type of thing. That's what we were doing. But then he said, well, this could be done, it could benefit many people and so on and so forth. Other people, they will benefit from this and so on. And you could, go on internet, you could download this thing, or you could view it anytime. Asynchronous reading could be there, self-learning could be there, and so on and so forth. And still there was a lot of resistance from us. He turned out to be a champion. He said, nahi, some of you will have to volunteer, and I'll play it back to you, and I'll let your students give you the feedback. They'll use this media, and they'll see you, and I'm pretty sure they're going to discard you after a while. They'll say, that's the way I'm going to be learning things, and so on. So he became a champion. So the champion, he's got to have, above anything, he's got to have passion also. That's something that's got to be there. Ethical issues are there, and you can actually see how they are. Sometimes there are temptations to understate costs. These are to try to get project in there. Withholding information, some nasty thing may be there, but I'm hiding it. Misleading status reports, these things really foul up things. Falsifying records, and these are like deadly things. If you run into this sort of thing, make it known to people, make it visible to people as much as you can. You won't really risk your this thing. It turns out more people are ethical because people understand the seriousness of these things. Compromising safety, that's something if you ever get into, just walk away from there. If you think management is not listening, try to articulate it as best as you can, but if you think, because in the end your neck is also going to be on the line, so you just make sure that is there. And approving substandard work, this you see a lot. These are all unethical practices. Then now we get into project planning. This is going to be a little long drawn out, but I'll try to make sure we get it done in some decent time. We won't go very far with this, and we'll do the exercise tomorrow. The first thing we are after is the schedule. Then we'll go into budget, then we'll go into staffing. Those things will be there. If you look at the IT example, this is like that waterfalls model. You got the major steps there, and you got those things. When you start asking the question, what is there in box 1, what is there in box 2, and so on and so forth, you'll find details. You are well trained in this area. You'll say, oh my God, yes, these are something I'm familiar with. This is something that we normally do. This also spells out the technological sequence of things. The reason for you to get these details is not just bureaucracy. It also gives you the sequence in which things should be done, because the later things are dependent on the things that came before this. If I move this forward, you end up with a network. Because I have to get to this estimation. I've got to get the time estimated, I've got to get the cost estimated. And in order for me to do these things, I must have a basis. And then that basis will come from the scope, historical data, the details of it, and then of course there is the cost side of it, which is like how much it is going to cost based on the resource requirements. That will have to be done. Again, I go back to these three slides, these three objects, and you see right away there is going to be our money part, there's going to be a schedule part, and there's going to be a specification part. These would be there. Cost estimation, some steps are there. By far the most important one is look at historical data, look at trends, look at people's experience and so on. If you have those things, you'll end up with a decent estimate. Obviously, you'll be off here and there. To control that, we have this procedure called EVM, Earned Value Management, which actually says the money that I'm paying the customer, paying the contractor, is that for the quality, for the work that he has done? Is the quality there? Has he met the deadline? And also, has he delivered basically things within cost? So there's cost, quality, and requirements. These things, cost and quality and requirements are the same. Cost, quality, and time. These three are the fronts on which I'll be managing this. To try to do this, I do my schedule development. I'll be doing this detailing tomorrow. I just want to give you a little glimpse of where we are going to be going. We'll be starting with the work breakdown structure. Any project you look at, it could be constructing a bridge. It'll have that project X right on top. Project X will be there on top. They will have the major deliverables. So to build the bridge, I've got to have the pillars, I've got to have the spans, I've got to have the road approaching and road going out. And for each pillar, I've got certain other things to do. So you basically ask the question, how am I going to be doing the project? I need A, B, C. How am I going to be A? I've got to have this other thing D in place. How am I going to be D? I've got to have D1, D2, D3. And these things come from experience. I'm pretty sure if I sat with you, if you're discussing ERP software with me, if I ask the questions, you'll be able to identify the modules right at the end. You'll be able to identify these are the modules, sir. You've got to build them together. And this is the beginning of sequencing the thing, because not all these things can be done all at once. But they are all independent. The dependency is only vertical. And wherever they interface, that's when the units are coming together to make a subsystem or probably a whole system. You look at any project, and I have a couple of examples from the IT world. Someone is trying to set up an intranet. You got the work breakdown structure there. Somebody is going to, again, detail some of that. Again, you've got some details there. And I'm pretty sure you're familiar with these sort of things. This is how, when I get down to the lowest level, I've got certain specific tasks that people have to take care of. I go from there to time boxing. Time boxing is basically you ask people, experienced people, how much time it is going to take, and he's going to give you a deadline. Or you probably tell him that you're going to get 6 months, and in that time this has to be done. There are issues with that. I will try to take a look at that later. If you want to go into details, then you break it down into work breakdown structure, and you look at these details to see these are the tasks that have to be done, and only then I can come up with a decent estimate for it. See, I've done that. I come to this technological sequencing. Technological sequence is very, very important. I mean, unless you do this right, and this is where you require some domain knowledge. What is to be done first? What is to be done next? Let me pause here. Let me answer some questions.
We talk about program management, which is essentially a basket of projects.
Yes.
So the risk management involved in this program management is it achieved primarily through diversification of the project, or is it the risk management at the project levels? Because in most of the real-time situations, the projects are not of your choice. You just have to do it. So
Yes.
how does this concept of diversification of projects fit into the risk management of the program?
Someone who is in charge of the program, he really tries to manage the portfolio. And someone who is in charge of the project, he tries to manage risk as best as he can for that project itself. Now the program manager, he makes sure he's got the right people there, and they'll do it the top job possible. Obviously things will foul up, and for that I've got risk management plan. This is why risk management comes along, risk analysis and risk management, in order for you to react the best way possible. If something does go wrong, you will be able to react to it. But the program manager, he makes sure he got the right people there, the good people there, so they are able to manage the projects themselves as best as they can. So risk management would be done at the project level, and the overall portfolio management would be done at the project level, and the program level. And the program manager, the only thing he makes sure is he assigns the projects the right priorities, like the critical one, major functional ones, minor functional ones, and the cosmetic ones. Like for example, one of his programs could also be landscape the area around the thing, or look after the home life of the workers, for example. There are some deadly situations, deadly work situations. For example, people who work in the mines, or who work in the jute mills in West Bengal, their working environment is just deadly. But there are some people, they are pretty perceptive of these things. They are taking steps to make sure the worker will come back to me instead of going to my competitor. There could be another plant next door, but I do something for him that is extra. For example, maybe there is a doctor, maybe his family can come and see the doctor, outdoor patient. When the factory is running, the man is working there and his family is getting treated there. Maybe for cold or something, fever, he's getting a free treatment there. This is the kind of thing that I make it especially attractive for people to come. Other questions, please? Yeah.
We talked about change management.
Yes.
So when we do change management, wouldn't that again reflect on risk management?
Yes, yes. Anytime you make a change, you got to walk all the way back. You got to make sure you identify again the risks, what things could go wrong. Again, you drop the old cause and effect diagram, you say what all things could be impacted by this. And again, come up with your plans, and I'll give you the risk reaction plan, how you react. Basically, the plan is either you try to reduce the probability of it, or you try to reduce the impact of it. It's like if you're walking around here in rainy season, if you're walking around this campus, will you walk around in a rubber chappal? You will not. You will obviously do some risk management. You'll put on good, nice, tight shoes because of our little friends, the wiggly friends who are all over the place. And every week you probably run into some guy who's kind of just sunning himself, or maybe enjoying the showers, and he's out there. So that's something we got to do. Anytime I make a change, I've got to relook at the risk plan. That's something there. More questions? Yeah.
So do you think that the scheduling, when you make a scheduling, it becomes a static thing, and it itself becomes a risk for the main project?
Even it could become a constraint. Is that what you're saying? Obviously, the very function of my drawing up a schedule is to use this as a contract, kind of a contract between myself and this. It's a control tool. If something does foul up, I got to bring that feedback, quick enough to management to make sure that we react to it. For example, let's say some supplier, he has a raw material problem or production problem or something, and he's not able to supply on time. I've got to react to it. Otherwise, the schedule is going to be out of the window.
So what I have seen that the mapping of the whole activities
Yes.
is very difficult. Even if I was very experienced, what
Yes.
is used? Suppose I am experienced,
Yes.
I take some things very granted, and that is why I make mistakes.
Yes.
Not and
Yes.
writing down the whole activities.
See, there is the ideal world. There's the ideal world of the textbook. I'm a realist. There's the ideal world of the textbook, and there's the down-to-earth, totally practical book. The reality is somewhere in between. So you got to do, like the TV show, we got to do reality checks. We got to make sure we take practices that make sense to me, and I don't lose sight of something like risk management. For example, I do go through the steps of scheduling, I do go through the steps of setting up the budget, I do go through the steps of quality assurance and so on, as described by this. Unless I do that, I'm going to be exposing myself to a higher risk. That's the whole issue. Am I exposing myself to overrun on budget, overrun on time, or having a customer that is not happy with the product? That's something I've got to look after. More questions? Yeah.
Risk management, do we need to plan for every risk, or the less probable risks are left as a...
Very good question. Very good question. I wish I could draw this here. What you do is, you just imagine, I'm going to be doing that at some other time. I have one axis which is the probability axis. So I've got low probability, medium probability, high probability. I've got on the impact side, I've got low impact, medium impact, high impact. Now, a risk item that is high probability and also high impact, that's the one I need to worry about the most right now. For example, that could be like coming from your hostel to this place, it could be running into a snake, for example, or having a road accident. Those are like, you know, the probability is also pretty high. It depends how are you going to reduce it. You won't go on a highly traveled road. You probably take the back road. You want to be safe after all. That's something that's like a priority in your mind. So what you do is you locate every risk on this matrix, the probability one and the impact one, and you try to see where do they belong. Anything that falls to the, you join a diagonal, anything that is on the high side of the diagonal, which is like high to medium probability, worry about them first. And for the others, you set up some contingency plan. This is something you really should be doing. If you do this, your project, and even then I must tell you this, it's like the theory has the limit of, you know, our eyes and ears and all. That's how far I can see with my theory. But there's a lot of things not seen by my senses, and I cannot really foresee a lot of things. So for that, what I do is I got to really work with experienced people. So what things still could go wrong, and see if I could put up some contingency plans there. So really, the total answer will not come from any one of these sources. There's got to be a lot of experience also. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure in life also you probably saw so many things you studied in books or you got from, you know, elders and so on and so forth. But there are certain things which are unique. They're your unique experience. The way you deal with the auto wala, you know, you got some special tricks there. You know, if you're, depending on the city you are in, you know, Delhi or someplace, you'll probably say, "Arey chodo, humko nahi jana hai," or something, whatever. You sound like a guy who's from Haryana. They'll treat you differently. You sound like a Bengali. Especially if you land at Bangalore airport. Okay, more questions? More questions? Any other questions? What would you like me to do? What is your plan now? We've covered the full span of project management. We started with starting the charter, scope, then you get into detailing, you gradually get into the planning side, execution side. In execution, you also got controls, then you got the delivery. All these have to be done. If they're done systematically, you won't really have this hodgepodge results. I should just tell you, 2 out of 3 projects are abandoned. And in software, if you see software history, 90% projects never really see the light of the day. And probably only 5% projects really end up getting packaged in a software. They just, you know, they are just thrown out because of various reasons. All kinds of things go wrong and requirements change, it goes over budget and so on and so forth. And a lot of work is pretty difficult. For example, someone wrote an old program in COBOL, and the program is running somewhere in Switzerland, and you are outsourced there. You're probably put out there offshore. Jaake kuch karo udhar, on site karo kuch, and you have no documentation or nothing at all, and you're trying to develop a patch. These are tough jobs. These are very, very tough jobs. So we found all kinds of ways to managing these things. But again, talk with someone who's done this sort of thing. It will reduce your risk. It will reduce your exposure, it will reduce your risk. So gang, it was fun being here. This is day 1, but we'll take it further. I will be studying, I'll be basically discussing critical path tomorrow. So take a look at that. We have no presentations tomorrow, so I'll be covering critical path tomorrow completely. And then when we come back, by the time you'll have probably one of these chapters with you. So the first group will end up doing the other thing. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.